Hey everyone, welcome to the Queer Culture Club. This is our monthly short format interview series that focuses on LGBTQ people who are defining the queer culture of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So my name is Terry Beswick and I'm the host and moderator for the Queer Culture Club. And before I bring on tonight's guest, I just want to tell you a little bit about the series. So every second Thursday monthly, we interview queer culture makers, including authors, playwrights, historians, activists, artists, and archivists to learn about their work, process, inspirations, hopes, and dreams. So tonight, I'm delighted to have a very special guest, queer Xicana writer and multimedia curator, Natalia Vigil. Natalia is the executive director of the Queer Cultural Center in San Francisco, and she's going to discuss her new position, her work, and her involvement in the upcoming 2021 Queer Arts Festival, National Queer Arts Festival. So let me tell you a little bit about Natalia. Natalia Vigil, she, her, hers, is a queer Xicana writer with Native heritage, a multimedia curator, and a big sister of 6, born and raised in San Francisco. She is an arts administrator who is passionate about community-driven creativity and cultural preservation through artistic sustainability. She currently serves as executive director of the Queer Cultural Center in San Francisco and is the co-founder of Still Here San Francisco, an intergenerational cultural preservation project amplifying the voices and creativity of LGBTQ, Black, Indigenous, and people of color raised in San Francisco. For her work with Still Here, she was honored as a local hero by the San Francisco Human Rights Commission. So with that, let me bring on my guest, Natalia. Hey, Natalia, good to see you.
Hi, Terry. Hi,
How
everyone.
are you this evening?
Nice to be with you. Good
It's good to be with you too. Yeah, so we've got a little chunk of time here, and I really want to get into as much as we can some meat and substance about the National Queer Arts Festival, which is coming up right around the corner, right?
Absolutely.
And I do want to give people who are watching on live stream on whatever platform they're watching on an opportunity to ask questions. And so I just want to say to people, if you are watching, feel free to pop something in the chat and we'll see it, and we'll try to respond to you during the show. And we'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end for that as well. But before we get into talking about the Queer Cultural Center and the festival, Natalia, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I read in your bio, that you're San Francisco born and bred, but maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your family, your chosen family, and how you got to where you are today with this position.
Sure. Well, you did share a lot in my bio, but I'll share a little bit more. So I was born and raised in San Francisco, and I like to say I was raised in the 415 with a dash of the 510 because I did have some of my childhood in Hayward, and as an adult, Oakland has also become very special to me. I've lived in San Francisco and Oakland, and one of the things about us who are from Still Here is we kind of end up making a home in many different places in the Bay, having to do with whatever happens in San Francisco and things with displacement and gentrification. So I certainly feel like I'm a Bay Area person, though San Francisco has my heart. So I grew up where, I had a lot of siblings, 5 who were my age, and parents who really cultivated art and community organizer. My father was a community organizer. And so the kind of San Francisco was our playground in a sense. And I grew up going to the Young Museum. I was at the opening of when Balmy Alley was created. I was part of Mission Cultural Center Moss Summer School program when I was in middle school, and could go through the mission and point out murals that I had the wonderful benefit of getting to paint when I was younger. So I think that art has always been part of my core. And as a young person, I was part of youth leadership opportunities, and that really made a difference for me because it showed me what it could be like to have a voice as someone who was working class, raised in San Francisco, and I was on the shy end. So it was difficult for me to be public. And, I got to do all these leadership programs, and I always stayed really close to youth and youth work. And as I got older, I made sure that I did a number of different ways that I was working with youth. And I did go to Mills for an MFA from Mills for poetry and prose. And I have a passion and love for creative writing myself. And about 10 years ago, my best friend Christina and I, we were going to the National Queer Arts Festival, and we just, found a place, going to all of the shows, and we were looking for the voices that were representing people who were raised in San Francisco, and there wasn't a show that had that. And so we ourselves became creating queer community artists through the Queer Cultural Center, and that kind of started to launch my own artistic kind of career in being a multimedia curator and the founding of Still Here. Simultaneously, I started to get involved in community outreach, community engagement, and really on the development side of work with our community. And for close to 7 years, I was the communications and development director at Lyric. And so with QCC, I get to bring all of my worlds together, including my own personal history, and step into this beautiful legacy as the executive director.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really great to have the opportunity to, especially give young people those kinds of opportunities to create and express themselves and express their communities. And I love hearing your story and talking about your trajectory. And there's a lot I can definitely relate to myself. And so we'll have to talk more because we actually have a lot in common. And I just love the Queer Cultural Center. And I mentioned to you before, I had a residency there in 2009 when I was working on my MFA in playwriting and we performed at the Mama Cleese's Voice Factory, and so I've always felt a real strong connection to the work that the Cultural Center has done. But can you tell me just a little bit about the history of the Cultural Center? When did it get started, and what its mission is overall?
Yeah. So QCC was founded in 1993 by a multiracial group of LGBTQ civil rights activists and artists. And QCC is actually one of the official cultural centers of San Francisco, which some people may or may not know, but I think that's a really important thing to point out about the history, because from the beginning, it's been an art organization that's committed to nurturing LGBTQ community and to really center our most vulnerable members. And so that means that from our inception, we've centered LGBTQ people of color in artistic leadership and our board majority, and continue to do that. And so you can see that reflected in our artists today. And it's been part of our history from the beginning. So our mission is to promote social justice and the artistic and financial development of queer art and culture. And we've been able to do that over time. And that's pretty amazing. I mean, one of the things that I have found is that QCC does have such a deep history. Like I was just speaking about my own, and you just spoke to yours. And so there's something about what it means to know that QCC has had a reach for so long. And another beautiful thing about it is that our signature program, the National Queer Arts Festival, which has always been in conjunction with Pride in the month of June, since 1988, has curated and produced 23 festivals. And so that means that we've featured more than 2,000 LGBTQ artists with different arts and cultural events. But the really amazing
and we're seeing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're seeing a little video off to the side there.
So that's actually showing us a preview of the festival this year. And so what you're seeing are our creating queer community artist shows. And you can see that the theme is "The Future Is," and each of these artists have chosen a sub-theme for their shows. So not only have they taken the theme of the future is and are creating shows or curating many artists who have multidisciplinary shows that are embodying the future is, but they also have sub-themes themselves. And one thing that I was saying before is just that, because of who QCC is featuring and who our work really showcases, it also means that over time, the festival and QCC's work has sort of forever changed who the community is and what audience looks like, which voices are heard, which stories are centered. So it's not just that the artists are QT, BIPOC artists, it's that the audience members themselves are TGNC, BIPOC audience members, and there's been over 10,000 audience members over time. And so you saw a little bit of a preview of this year's festival and the artists, and I'm hoping that all of you that are here tonight and you, Terry, will just continue to build that audience.
Yeah, that's great. I love those graphics, and I recognize several of the artists that you have coming up in the festival this year, and I'm really excited about it. And normally we'd be talking about, hey, do you need to use our museum for an event or something like that? But of course, this year it's all going to be online again, and it's kind of like unfortunate. It's kind of like falling right in the period where we're opening up, but we're not, haven't quite figured it all out yet in terms of venue, in-person events, and everything else. But on the other hand, it's sort of like it also opens up opportunities, right, in terms of audience engagement with online performances, right? So it's going to be different this year. But how are you approaching and tackling all those issues?
Well, this year is a completely virtual festival. Last year, there was so much that was unpredictable at the time. And so the festival, as it was in person, was canceled, but we did commission our artists, and a number of the artists did want to move forward with creating virtual work. So QCC did put out a number of shows. And so this time is really about having a complete virtual festival. And to pivot that way, there are new things to take into consideration. And so it really means understanding what does artistic cultivation look like in the age of a digital divide, and what do our artists need in order to produce events that are completely virtual. So for instance, in reaching back out to the artists this year, we reached out to folks before, we told them the theme, we asked them if they wanted to be part of the festival this year. And we also asked them, really candidly, what do you need in order to create virtual work? Where are you comfortable, and where are you kind of uncomfortable, and really building and pivoting our skill building mentorship, as well as what we provide for the artists in terms of production to really meet their needs. So while it may not look like they say contracting with a space, it may be a platform, it may be training on editing software. We actually sent artists the things that they needed. Did they need a green screen? Did they need recording devices? Things that were really going to give them what they needed, because not only are they creating original work at this moment, which I have to say as an artist, I have not really been able to do. And so I'm amazed by the fact that all of these artists are creating work. So not only are they creating work, it's work that's in response and that's deeply complex because it's about our time. And then it's also work that is having to be produced virtually. And that is a whole other layer that they are taking on. So we're trying something new, and I think we're learning and we're pivoting toward whatever is to come, following the artist's lead, and we will see what it's going to be, and I'm excited.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm excited too. The Queer Cultural Center, I mean, is the producing organization for the National Queer Arts Festival. And so, you know,
Yes.
so that, and this is your main program, but the organization exists year round, and it is a huge undertaking to plan a national festival like this. And I'm just curious. How, over the years, I've heard people ask, you know, so where is the Queer Cultural Center? You know, how do I get there? And I think, you know, the history of it, as I understand it, just from, you know, talking with Pam Peniston, who I think is a co-founder, right?
Yes.
And Pam has, of course, done amazing work in creating the organization, and I just think it's the way I've heard it is you know, it's intentional. You know that you know, getting a brick and mortar location, first of all, that's extremely costly, but there's also just lots of venues in lots of different neighborhoods that can be used under normal circumstances. You know, so there's no center, physical center anyway. It's always like in a different location, so it kind of works, right?
Well, we are connected. So we are one of the, like I said before, official cultural centers, but there are many of them, and we are connected to the African American Art and Culture Complex, as well as like as Soma Arts and all of the cultural centers. We sort of work together, and some of us are virtual and some of us are brick and mortar, and we are very connected to those that do have buildings. But I think one of the things in terms of thinking about our mission and what it means to have economic and artistic development and sustainability is truly understanding what that means to also infuse that kind of vision and purpose back into city and Bay Area institutions and event spaces. So it's very beautiful that we can actually, you know, contract with and showcase different pieces in different event venues, and to find like which one is going to actually work for an artist, which one makes sense for a particular show. And so it's not just about like, you know, our Queer Cultural Center alone. It really is about the artists and the overall artistic infrastructure and sustainability of San Francisco in partnership with so many other organizations and the other cultural centers, and including those that have buildings.
Right. And so much of, yeah, thank you for that explanation. And so much of what the Queer Cultural Center does is about lifting up younger artists, BIPOC artists, of course, and uh, um, uh, artists that are early in their career, to give them, you know, give them a platform and the resources to be able to, and the publicity support also, you know, just, you know, to be able to promote their work. I mean, is a huge challenge, but I mean, during the lifetime of the Queer Cultural Center, the San Francisco art scene has undergone a lot of changes. And just like San Francisco at large in the Bay Area, there's been a lot of gentrification and displacement of people of color and of artists from out of the city, largely due to socioeconomic changes, you know, and stresses. And you know, it's a difficult place for a queer artist, for any artist. It's difficult to make a living, or to just have enough resources to be able to create your art. So it's an invaluable resource, I think, for folks. And it's even harder now, right? During COVID. I mean, there's like, you know, there's so many people unemployed, and for an artist or entertainer, the nightlife scene workers, you know, are just under enormous stress. Unemployment's going to be running out. Isn't the role of the Queer Cultural Center even more important now? And how are you going to adapt to those additional challenges?
Absolutely. I mean, when I think about the question of now, you know, I realize there's no way to really adequately describe this year, and the oppressions that our artists have been facing: racism, anti-Blackness, police violence, homophobia, and transphobia, classism, gentrification, displacement, all of those oppressions, they existed and were in place even before this pandemic. Now we lay on top of it a pandemic, and we also lay on top of it what I was speaking to before, which is really like a digital divide and access. Many of our artists are low income, they're chronically ill or disabled. Like you said, they're emerging artists. They have been economically devastated by the loss of gig or part-time work or even full-time work. I think Pride is certainly a time in June where artists can look toward really getting to showcase themselves and have work from that time. And so the sustainability of queer and trans artists of color is just something that we know is going to require more financial support and capacity building than ever, and really thinking about how racism and white supremacy are certainly public health issues for Black and brown people, and like I said, layer a pandemic over it, and we're looking at huge challenges. But I feel like that one thing that we have learned during this time, and that the artists are reminding us, is that this isn't a time for isolation. This is a time for community. It's a time for us to really lean into our mission and into networking with each other, and really coming together to offer even more capacity building, sustainability, and commissioning of the artists together, so that we can really get through this and move to the next phase of what life is going to look like. We certainly have had many waves of devastation as a community, and we always prevail.
Yes, we do. Yeah, thank you for that thoughtful response. I think you're really kind of like showing why you're in the position you are, because I mean it's a lot. There is so much discussion that is happening, about racial equity issues and about resources that are needed to maintain or sustain the culture, and in particular the queer culture, the artist culture in San Francisco, to keep it thriving. So you're hopeful.
I am. I'm hopeful. I feel like the future is going to be a hybrid. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We're going to follow the artists and their vision. Like I said, we know people are experiencing different things, and I think that's why we have the theme of the future is like, what will this manifestation look like? Also, what does it mean to really understand that we are the future? The future is already here. I think that often there's this question of what artists are going to produce. And certainly we've seen artists produce incredible things. We've seen artists be at the forefront of responses right now. But if we've learned anything from elders who lived through the height of the HIV and AIDS epidemic, we know that there's always, with trauma, a time needed to cultivate, to heal together, to be in community together, and to fully grow to this next phase of artistry. And so I think really backing artists to know that their sustainability and their individual lives are important is where we can put our energy. And I am hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, artists are often able to help to heal the community, by sort of sharing their inner turmoil, or the things that they've experienced and survived. Also, I think for me, it's always been transformative to express my own trauma and my own pain in a way that others can identify with, and conversely, that's what I get out of watching theater, or or reading poetry, or what have you. It can be very healing for me. Just the identification, I think, just to say I'm not alone, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's the space between right before the creation of a piece that takes that kind of emotional work that an artist does, of taking the world as it is, all of the beautiful and oppressive things, and the artist does that work for us to then answer sort of life's hardest questions and give us the answer in the form of art. And so what I want to make sure that we do is that we are also providing for artists in that moment and that time that they need to be doing that really important work and emotional work, and answer those questions for us. And I think we do that by really making sure that we are providing community, that we are providing resource, and
yeah. Thank you so much for that work. And and the other thing is, I mean, and I think what's amazing about the cultural products that the festival is sharing with people is that these are often very individual and specific stories. People only have their own stories to share, right? But there's a universality about it in terms of how it's received, that people can appreciate the commonality, right? That we're all having similar experiences. So I understand your job is to create that platform and let the flowers blossom, right? And how long have you been in the position now as executive director?
Say about 9 months.
Okay, so yeah, and how's it going? Are you enjoying it? It's a weird time to start a new job in the middle of a pandemic.
It really is. I mean, it's been a truly riveting experience because not only did I step into the role during the pandemic, but also I stepped into the role during a time when the co-founders and the founder was leaving, Pam Pennison, who you named earlier. And so what an incredible legacy that I'm stepping into. So for me, it's been about learning QCC's history, not just from what it was like for me to be an artist, but sort of like the conversation we're having today. How has QCC touched so many people, and what has the organization been part of, while also pivoting completely to a virtual festival and supporting the organization and the artists and what it means to really be part of virtual community. We haven't seen each other. I've been doing this without seeing the staff and the artists, and yet we've been able to build a really sweet cohort and a sweet organization that's going to move into its next phase even more. And I'm looking forward to the manifestation of the legacy moving forward.
Well, congratulations on all your work, and really best of luck with your first National Queer Arts Festival that you're serving at the helm of. I hope that, actually, we've got a question just popped up at the last second here. Mason has a question for Nadi. How has your relationship to queer community and chosen family changed over the pandemic? And what new connections are you hoping to make when things reopen?
Has it changed?
So we can take a few extra minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a way in which my queer community and chosen family has deepened. It's really something to. I was someone who was always like coming home late because I was in person in community and got used to what that was like to walk down the streets, to see Mason, to see other people, to be at events. And, I feared that meant that that was all going to dissipate, having to be isolated like this. But instead, I feel like it's actually connected me even deeper to the generations before, to those ancestors who are no longer here, who are going through such difficult times. It's allowed us to actually traverse and cross history. We know that we're living through something that is completely historic, and it's brought me closer to the artists that I'm connected to. And like I said, to really feel the necessity and urgency behind us uniting as a network of organizations, people, and artists in the Bay Area. And so I'm hoping that we're going to just really celebrate being able to be in person, but also to really learn from what it's meant to stay connected in this way, and to see what it's like to build hybrid futures, especially in terms of great strengths and leaps and bounds people have made around accessibility. And I think that there's a lot to learn for access to our community through what we've learned during this time.
Well, that's a great answer, and that's a great way to close. I think, it's for me, it's been like really interesting to go to my first events or to my first hangout visits. Like in the Castro, I go to the Castro Country Club, and just to go and say, oh my God, I actually want to hang out, instead of like my usual introverted self, just to, skip on by, but I actually want to like talk to people and say, hey, I haven't seen you in a year. It's wonderful. So to do that at an event will be definitely a wonderful celebration. But yeah, thank you again for bringing us the Queer Cultural Festival for Pride season. And I just want to ask you one favor before we go.
Absolutely.
Can we collaborate? Can we work together?
I love when we do that.
Okay, yeah, I know we've done things in the past, but yeah, it'd be great to just connect together and start thinking about what we can do between now and next Pride season, and because I think history and art are so much intertwined. History and culture are so much intertwined, and are really just different aspects of the same thing. And so I think there's some stuff that we can do.
Yes, I think cultural preservation and documentation and working together are also the future for all of us. So thanks, Terry, for having me.
Yes, and thank you for not minding that we sort of have the same name for this show as your organization. It wasn't on purpose. It just kind of, I guess, just brilliant minds think alike. So thank you very much, Natalia, for being here. And again, best of luck.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Terry.